So we're here today with Kyle and Lucas and myself. We're going to be talking about collective spiritual emergence. All three of us are spiritual emergence coaches. And so the concept of spiritual emergence has been in our work and in our lives. And with those, we support in many ways. And so when we think about what's happening on the planet right now, we've come a couple of times into this concept of collective spiritual emergence. So we're just going to talk about that today and see what arises for each one of us with this and see, what comes through. Yeah. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So for me, I feel like one of the things that's really come into focus is how to really do the self-care that's needed to manage the stressors of these new conditions, right? Whether it's supporting my clients with adjusting and the fear and the unknown, but also really to make sure that I have the bandwidth inside myself that's necessary to be fully present to all of them and ultimately to myself as well. So that's something that has been coming up for me a lot. Yeah.
So important, the self-care aspect. I definitely feel like my nervous system has been so out of whack and actually been having trouble sleeping at night because I feel like I'm just kind of, probably because I check the news every once in a while and that activates my internal process. But I guess being in the thick of things here in New Jersey and being immune compromised, I don't know, I guess the reason why I do that is just trying to understand what's going on so I could try to be safer in my mind. But I also notice how that really activates stuff. And so, yeah, self-care is so important. I know on our spiritual emergence coaching support call for other coaches, we talked a lot about play. And I've been really trying to just embody that for self-care. And I think it's really important for all of us to really take a step back and take care of ourselves during this, because the energy is it's pretty overwhelming at times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been thinking a bit about self-care and its overlap with kind of indulgence and the difference between the two, and how sometimes I would draw the line with maybe something that is something that I just enjoy, but may not be particularly nurturing or nourishing, I guess. So thinking a lot about food in that way, and especially with a lot of stress, I know people can resort to eating sugar or heavy comfort foods. And for myself, trying to find a balance between, trying to go for the healthy options, what's going to support my immune system and my mental well-being. And then also there's sometimes where even just having something that I just enjoy because I enjoy it, like a cookie or a piece of pizza or something, is also really nourishing in some way that I don't get from other foods. So it's finding this balance between all those different pieces, and really just thinking about that spectrum, I guess, of self-care and indulgence,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And what I'm hearing when you share that is this idea of coping strategies, right? And that working with my own and with my clients, where it's okay, what's coming up? What do we reach for, right? When times of stress. And, sometimes those are internal strategies and sometimes they're external strategies, right? Sometimes it's I'm just so glad that there's a little dog that lives here in this house with me, and that to me doesn't feel like indulgence. It feels like it's actually serving and healing and supporting my nervous system, which is why, I have clients that I've offered emotional support animal letters for and stuff, because I know how impactful that is to have, a furry friend. And other things where it's okay, so sometimes these other habit patterns get activated in times of stress, the worrying, the catastrophizing, or things like that people are really experiencing. Like, we don't know what happens in the face of the unknown, right? In our nervous systems, and socially, and all of that, and economically for folks. So I'm really noticing like these tools, right? And some of them are the less helpful ones. Some of them are actually ones that I've gathered these tools over the years, and thank God that I have all these tools in my toolkit that I can use and then offer them to my clients. So, I get that edge though. It's like, is this good for me, or is this something that's filling that need, but isn't ultimately gonna, so I try to find that balance too, Lucas. It's like having like a really astringent and like, alkalizing green drink with like ginger and kale and lemon, and it's just, enlivening, right? And then being like, so I'm gonna make a little bit of rice pasta tonight, and just like balance it out. Yeah, but I think creativity too is, when Kyle, you were saying about play, I'm like, I feel like there's a connection to creativity there, It's like, in what ways can we find our creativity expressed, or be able to share, in different kinds of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
it's interesting.
Oh, go ahead.
You can go, Lucas.
I was just going to say, I think it's helpful to find the overlap between like the things that are really good for us and we enjoy them. Like you said, that really energizing, nourishing green drink sounds delicious, as well as like very helpful for a lot of reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah, my mouth was kind of watering when you said that. I was like, I could really go for something like that right now.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. My roommate makes them for me. She's amazing. She's nice. She's got me hooked on them now.
Well, that brings up like an interesting point too about, I guess like food right now. Like, how are we like kind of taking care of ourselves with food, when especially people might be afraid to go out to the grocery store? Maybe they're not, like, everything's sold out in different places. So going out and maybe trying to buy healthy things, or just trying to like build a nice sustainable pantry with staples. I noticed like I did not intentionally, but just kind of eating a lot of carbs, because that's just, I bought a lot of like oats. Well, I guess, yeah, oats and grains and stuff like that. Because I'm like, okay, this is like long shelf life, and I can make all this stuff with it. So yeah, just even thinking about that, like I haven't been going out to the grocery store often. So I've been trying to just like utilize what's around me, and I wouldn't say necessarily all very healthy. And at times I'm like, I really just need to go out and buy more vegetables and stuff like that. So just kind of even taking that into account as well. It's like, what's at the grocery store right now? There's, I hear a lot of stuff still sold out in a lot of places.
Right. Really that, risk management, about going out into public places, and I was actually surprised at how people weren't doing the protocols. I, had the mask and the glasses and the gloves, and I was trying to do the 6 feet, and people would swoop in front of me and grab stuff. And I was just like, we need to be taking this very seriously. And so I did stock up too. So it's like, I won't have to go out again for hopefully a long time. Yeah, get those pantry items. And I think, that what ties in with the creativity for me is like being creative with food. Like, that didn't used to be a thing that I was, I just had these like, these kind of ideas of like, these are the things that I make or whatever. Right. And I'm used to it or whatever. I love it. But now I'm like trying to get really creative and make new things and, express in that way, and like nurture myself in that way. And it's, less time commuting, don't get home at 10:30 p.m. anymore. It's like I can cook a meal and slow down and eat my food slowly and enjoy it. And I think that that's really healing, to like food as medicine,
And then you start to realize how much time that actually takes. And you're like, oh, this is probably why I don't eat healthy, because it's always go, go, go. And then when you finally slow down to cook all your meals, you're like, this is actually pretty time consuming at times, unless you do like meal prepping and stuff like that and plan ahead.
Right.
But even with that, I've been thinking a lot about ways to sneak more healthy options like into meals that I would make anyways, like just putting more herbs in eggs, or like different nutrient dense like vegetables in, you know, pastas or whatever I'm making. Like, just instead of just having like the one thing that I would have had normally, like how can I make this healthier? And especially for
Right.
like when I'm cooking for my parents, like sneaking in some things that they might not eat usually.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's like, just up level what you would make anyway, right? Especially like the herbs because they have the medicinal properties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, a lot of times when we're, working with our groups with spiritual emergence, we talk about like, these are the tools, these are the resources, this is the self-care stuff, right? And so when we think of what's happening, and we zoom in on like, how do we, work day to day with what's happening and the stress management and, instilling hope and all of that, and how to create, ritual and routine and structure within our lives, all of that. And then we kind of zoom out and like the big picture of what's happening. I think also in that way, like the concepts of spiritual emergence can really still be really helpful here. And,
Mm-hmm.
like thinking of it as an initiatory process, like for me is a topic that I've been kind of, mulling over since we decided to do this, is that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is our species going through an initiation right now? And really this sort of the veil being lifted and seeing all of these structures that are not serving all of us in humanity and not serving the earth. And so that's something
Mm-hmm.
that I've been thinking about, is like, how do we get back in alignment? And is this
Mm-hmm.
initiation, part of, and, maybe it's a multi-phase initiation. It's like, I don't know, but is this part of something larger that's happening that's going to align us in a different way? And I'm just wondering, yeah, if that's part of what's happening.
Yeah.
I definitely feel that way at times. Something I've been thinking about, and I've had this like Instagram post written out for the past few days, but there's things I want to tweak and haven't gotten it out. But just thinking about the concept of spiritual emergence and emergency, and I feel like we're well past the emergence phase, and we're in emergency at the moment. Um, and like we are in crisis, especially here in the States. I mean, our numbers are surpassing most other countries, and things are looking pretty dire in some places. And just thinking about this idea of like containing spiritual emergence versus an emergency, and I feel like we are definitely more in an emergency kind of situation, and thinking about like this framework that I use for understanding how to integrate like exceptional experiences. This idea of like GPA, grounding, processing, and then action. And I think like something I've been really chewing on is like when we're in an emergency, I think the most important thing is taking care of ourselves and staying grounded. And so I'm trying to think about like, food and like exercise and taking care of my mental health and self-care tips. And there's all this other stuff I want to be processing and thinking ahead in the future, and, just kind of like envisioning what that's going to look like. And there's times when I have to pull back and be like, okay, like I'm almost like not in the place to process all this stuff. I really need to like be moment by moment and just stay grounded during all this stuff. And as things start to settle, then I feel like I can really start to process and take like action. But obviously there's smaller actions that we can do by staying grounded, right? There's times where I'm like, I need to start this garden. I want to start growing my own food and getting some herbs ready and stuff like that. But yeah, I've been really thinking about like really taking care of this like 3D reality, staying grounded, thinking about family, community members, what safety protocols can we put in place to, protect our loved ones and communities, and also just really looking after my own health. That's physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental health, So how am I really just like staying grounded during this emergency phase?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was thinking while you were saying that the GPA um, aren't it's not like a linear process by any means, or
No.
it's not even like one at a time. Like even gardening can be grounding and action, and like while you're doing it,
Hmm.
there's this process happening in your head, so it's like all levels at once. And yeah, I just think of like each day being kind of a swirl of those three at different times.
Totally.
But the focus could be more on grounding, like what is going to help me kind of resource through this.
Right.
Hmm.
And I love that you use the word resource, because I feel like that's what we're talking about. Like, whether we're talking about from a trauma perspective, like we don't do trauma processing without resourcing, right? We don't
Hmm.
titrate.
Hmm.
And like, if we're in an emergency state, it's the same thing. It's like we were talking about containment, right? So it's like, how do we create sanctuary for everyone to go through the experiences that they're going through? And I'll say, for
Hmm.
me, one of the ways that I resource is holding the vision of a possible future where we get out on the other side of this and it makes things better. And
Hmm.
I've been thinking a lot about these words that we hear in these times, right? We hear like apocalypse and Armageddon, right? And I want to clarify those, because it's like those, they feel like two different tracks in a way. It feels like one is like the destructive aspect. It's like stuff is falling apart and there's suffering and death and and disease, and actually there's a way that the structures that are in place need to collapse, and that Shiva's sort of sense of like destruction for the sake of transformation, like that part of it, right? And then there's apocalypse, which is actually the great revealing, the unveiling. So we're seeing actually all of the problems that were there all along, and we didn't see them before. So for me, it's not a bypass to do this kind of visioning work. For me, it's not only a spiritual practice, but it's actually even more of a difficult spiritual practice when there's the collective panic and the collective suffering, because my heart is like tearing apart, because there is so much
Hmm.
suffering, and it's like, it's not a bypass to call upon angels and guides and everybody out there to say, help us, and to say, what do we need to do ourselves to help ourselves as humanity? So it's not to take away our agency, but it's to call in everything that we have as resources in this
Hmm.
time, that there's a way that, like, whatever these tools are, whether there's certain things that we need to stay grounded in order to bring in the new. Like, if you're not grounded, does have that potential to be bypassed, right? And to get ungrounded and to go into these other spaces. But for me, it's like, with that grounding, going into those spaces is a resource, going into the possibility and into the hope that, on the other side of this initiation, humanity can have structures that where everyone gets what they need,
Hmm.
and the earth, isn't
I,
continue to be destroyed.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's like the one thing that I'm trying to hold focus on through all of this, and it is grounding to like think about these hopeful possibilities like for the future, and how this can all kind of come out for the better for everyone involved, which is everyone. I mean, I think like I've been thinking a lot about how what has transpired over the last few weeks. How much of this are things that we were actually wishing for? For example, like, how many times have you said, I wish I had more time at home, or I wish I had more time to connect with
Hmm.
people, or I wish, even like ecologically, like I wish there weren't as many flights. I wish there weren't, as much pollution and all this stuff. And maybe not in this way, like this isn't the form that we kind of wished it to take, but there is a lot that has kind of happened in the last few weeks that a lot of us really wanted: more time with our families, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and at the same time, it's also revealing a lot of fears that were already present for us as well. Like, you know, I think a lot of people are confronting their fear, just fear in general, but fear of uncertainty, fear of death, fear of what's going to happen to my family and myself, and fear of how the world's going to turn out. So like all those were already present before this happened. It just got a little louder, really.
Yeah.
Guess you got to be careful what you wish for. It's not
Yeah.
always pretty.
It's bringing everything into focus. Like, what are the priorities? You know, how are we in alignment or not in alignment? Right? Relationally, economically, you know. And I know that there are people who are in positions where things are happening to them that are outside of their control, and that don't have the ability to work from home. And so I know how blessed I am to be able to continue to work with my clients online. And that there are people who maybe they run their own businesses and their businesses have closed, and the people that worked at the businesses don't have jobs. And, you know, so there's a lot that is falling apart, that, you know, there isn't necessarily a structure there in place yet to catch everyone. And it's really terrifying, and people are really struggling to, you know, whether it's get food on the table, keep the PG&E on, the electricity on, get the rent paid, you know. And so we don't really know how everything's going to play out. But I love this idea of like staying really focused on, you know, what are the things that we can do, what's in our purview, right? What can I do, you know, within my group of those that I'm connected to, and then what are actions we can take outside of that in terms of supporting other people in the community or on larger scales, you know. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing up like the spiritual aspect. You know, I've found myself going inward a lot in the past few weeks, and like even like it's been really interesting. Like I never really, I guess, like say pray to God necessarily. I more kind of sometimes like shamanic at times, and you know, many entities. And it's been really interesting how that's been changing, and actually trying to like have conversations with a God, a creator, you know, and how grounding that is, right? Because it gives us hope. It gives us some sort of meaning on like how to push forward through all this, especially when times do feel really uncertain. And I also think it's a great time to start to develop that inner world, right? That relationship with something that's maybe beyond us. So this is a really great opportunity. Things are slowing down to actually take the time to go inside when maybe we didn't always have that. Really important. Because I think that stuff like that will help us push us forward through these difficult times, and just really holding that hope. Because, you know, we could definitely get in that mindset that will just make us all spiral, right? That this is all going to collapse, everything's going to hell, and then everybody acts out of like really malicious intent, versus like trying to hold a narrative where maybe this is cleansing and it's going to be difficult. And it's almost kind of like, you know, homeopathy or naturopathic medicine to like amplify the symptoms, right? That means it's like clearing itself out, and that's not comfortable, right? You know, I remember talking to a naturopath and just talking about like fevers, right? Fevers are uncomfortable, but it's also killing the virus off and attacking it. And I feel like, you know, this amplification is really happening right now, and it's really uncomfortable. And but how do we really stick through this process, and either find some sort of spiritual meaning to keep us rooted, right? Instead of just feeling really untethered and just making maybe like decisions that maybe aren't necessarily always helpful, right?
Yeah, that's right. Like this time, it's like developing or furthering spiritual practices in whatever way that is. You know, for some people it's a practice of being embodied as a spiritual practice, or singing, or creating art, or, you know, I mean, all of that to me these are all expressions of spiritual practice because it's connected to soul, it's connected to something beyond ourselves, the archetypal realm or the shamanic realm, and these practices that, that do connect us, like, working in the Akashic, trying to zoom out, see the bigger picture of, these patterns, pandemic patterns over time and things like that. And how, what is happening, what is shifting, and what can be learned, right, from these experiences that we can take forward, whether it's, personally or collectively.
Yeah, I think one of those things that are kind of like amplifying at this time is like everyone's relationship with death, and really becoming aware of what you're feeling around death is and how comfortable you are with the whole idea. And at the same time, it's like having me reflect on so many experiences I've had in the past that have involved like a death rebirth experience, or how many times have I had to be reminded that I'm not just limited to my body, or just like that the physical world is all there is. And even with these experiences, like still feeling challenged through this to hold on to that belief and really feel it, like really feel okay with like whatever is to come, like getting sick or dying or anything. I know that's not the end or like the worst thing that could happen. And so there's like this dual thing happening at the same time, where I do have this fear and anxiety around it, but there's this deeper knowing that like that's even okay, like whatever happens is okay.
Yeah, that's tough stuff to sit with, I think, for most people. And I know my, I guess, quote unquote, death anxiety has definitely peaked. And I don't know if it's necessarily the anxiety of dying, but I've been really replaying a lot of my near death experience the past week and thinking like, I could not even be here talking right now. And it's just interesting to see this anxiety creep in, thinking like, oh, like, since I am immune compromised, like how is this virus going to affect me, and could this really take me out? And just noticing like how much anxiety and fear is bubbling up in me at times. But then just like reflecting back on when I was dying, I was really peaceful. And I really trusted the process. And deep in my bones, I know there's something beyond this world from that experience. But something that comes up a lot, and I think the thing that's like been really just like tearing at me, is just this concept of how we live our life is how we prepare for death, and how we prepare for death is how we live our lives. And it's really just shaking me on how I want to spend my time here. And just realizing that there's times when I'm just doing all this stuff that I just don't want to be doing. And just so time has started to become a very, very precious thing for me, in the past like few weeks, of just it being at the forefront and being like, man, there's so much stuff I want to do, and there's so much stuff I'm not doing because I'm giving my time and energy elsewhere. And so I'm actually having this like this back and forth between like, oh, these are all the things I'm doing, I enjoy at times, but I don't want to be spending my time doing that all the time. And it's really having me kind of reflect on, how do I want to spend my time here? And so, yeah, it's kind of got me back in my 16-year-old way of thinking, because this is how I was thinking, especially after my near-death experience. And it makes me just want to like completely destroy a lot of things in my life in a way, and completely restructure at times. But yeah, I don't know how the death anxiety is like for you guys, or how that's been coming up, or even if it is coming up. I don't know.
Well, I just wanted to just reflect the impact of that I'm just so grateful for what you offer, and for these years of, spending, collaborating, and now with Lucas, it's such a precious thing. Like, I think, what I'm reflecting on these weeks is like the people that are soul family, like how much I just want to tell them more, that kind of thing. So, and just making those adjustments, like, who do you need to connect with more? Like you were saying, like, what are the things that we want to be spending our time on, and I think, like, for me, it's like priority and meaning. It's like what feels like the most impactful thing, what feels like, for me, for internally, for spiritually, for my clients, but also what feels like, it's almost like these existential questions, like the portal of death, like goes into these existential questions of, like, meaning and purpose, and what are we doing here, and for me, I have been also experiencing and having some dreams and stuff about my near-death experiences and things, as well as clearing stuff from other traumas as well. Just lots of vivid dreams from different houses of my childhood and different people, and it's been a very vivid dream world lately also.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, so vivid. On this topic of dreams and just what we were talking about, my dream this morning was spot on with like what I was just sharing. I got in a car with like 4 other people, and they started driving, and this person started spinning out of control. We went over this huge bank, and everybody in the car died. And I guess when we crashed, I said, wait a minute, this isn't my story. Why did I put myself in that car? That was everybody else's story. They wanted to go along. That wasn't what I wanted to do. But for some reason, I decided to just stay in the car when that had nothing to do with me. And I think that comes back to this idea of how am I spending my time? And, how often am I just giving energy to everywhere and not really focusing on the things that mean the most to me? And death always makes me reflect that, of like, wow, time is so precious, and where do you put your energy, right? That's all we have, time and energy.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because I'm also reflecting on like this shift in my relationship with productivity over the last couple weeks, that like before that I felt like I wanted to spend as many waking hours like in some sort of productive mode, and now there's still that, like, I guess like I want to contribute more to this moment that we're in. Like, how can I support people, and how can I help, facilitate the process that's unfolding right now? And at the same time, um, I've shifted away from like this need to just be productive all the time. Like, there is an importance to, like we were talking about earlier with self-care, and like trying to restore my energy and rest and have a good night's sleep. And like that's the one thing that's like non-negotiable for me right now, is like I need a full night's rest. Like, I won't commit to anything too early in the morning. And like that's, and for the first time in my life, I felt like so comfortable with making that distinction, because it's so essential to like mental health and physical health and immunity and everything right now. So yeah, this like balance between wanting to do things that are meaningful and have a positive contribution, and also like keeping myself healthy.
So important.
Yeah, I love this idea of non-negotiables. Like, what are the non-negotiables right now in terms of self-care and being fully available for the present moment, right? That for each of us, those might be different, but no, like trying to figure out what they are, it's really vital. Yeah.
Michelle, you're working with clients in the mental health space right now, and I just wonder how important is it to take care of your mental health during this time, and what things are you seeing? Obviously, not disclosing personal information, but what type of stuff are you hearing? Are you seeing? What, like, how important is it to seek out mental health services during this time?
Like I think I mentioned, I was like, I'm just so grateful that we have a medium that we can continue to offer therapy, because there's
Mhm.
so much fear and there's so much stress and all of the issues that are under the surface, like you were talking about this amplification. Everything comes to the surface, right? And so it's so important to be able to offer support for folks while they're going through all of the adjustments, all of the fears, and what arises for them. And it took me some adjusting to figure out what works for me to be able to be sustainable, while everybody's in it, including myself. And so I've, in that 10-minute window between clients, which is, ends up being about 7 or 8 minutes really effectively, I will, I'll smudge the area. I will do my shaking out grounding practice really quick. I'll also, say some prayers. I mean, like we were saying before, like going back to prayer, like that has really, it's like, help me be in service in this moment to this
Mhm.
person in a way that feels like, that they're not alone, that they get what they need, that, in whatever way that I can be, a vessel for divine
Mhm.
love. And that's helped a lot. It's helped a lot to feel like I don't have to do it alone. That like I do have, spiritual support to support those that
Mhm.
I am caring for. And it really helps me like get out of the way too. Like I don't have to fix it. I don't have to figure it out, because when I'm triggered, when I'm in my unresourced place, I go to the, oh my gosh, what do you need? Right. And as a therapist, we need to sit back and down and be with and be with and be with. And so to watch that part in myself, to say I don't have to fix it, and in fact it's not right for me to do that, but what is right is for me to
Mhm.
offer resources when I find resources that are available, and do guided meditations, grounding meditations. I'm going to be recording some more meditations and putting them online for my clients, things like that I think can be helpful. But really
Awesome.
like refining my own self-care, like speaking of non-negotiables, yeah, I can't be
Mhm.
lackadaisical with that right now. Thanks for asking.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how has it been for you? Like while you're doing interviews, you're working with folks, you're engaging a lot, and probably I imagine a lot more because everything's online. You know, is it still really important to have that downtime, and are you able to find that for yourself, Kyle?
Yeah, I've been picking up my guitar a little bit, which I haven't really picked up in the past like 2 years. I kind of just, I don't know why, just haven't been
Mm.
playing it. So yeah, I've been making it, making more time for myself to do stuff like that. And it's so easy to overwork when now you're just isolated in home, and there's just a million things that you can do online of like producing content and just getting stuff out there, scheduling things. And yeah, I find myself just being like, I don't have enough time in the day to do everything I have written down. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and they're like, I don't even really know how to describe what I do. And I was like, that's how I feel some days. I'm
Mhm.
like, I just feel like I wear too many hats, right? I'm like trying to run a business. I'm trying to schedule interviews and podcasts. I'm trying to support people that are reaching out that want like individual help. I'm trying, I was doing breath work, and now we put that on hold. And now I'm thinking about like, how are there other creative ways to support people? And, there's just like all these different roles of juggling. And it's really, it keeps me busy, which has been awesome. Like I'm definitely not just Netflixing and chilling this whole week. Like I am definitely just doing a lot of work. But that's also has made me reflect on, wow, yeah, if I wanted to, like, I could just work round the clock, and I need to step away from the computer. I need to play the guitar. I need to go outside. I need to exercise. Like, I need to take care of myself, because that's not sustainable to just constantly trying to answer emails and do this and do that. And so, yeah, like, I'm sure you notice, like, I definitely get behind with emails, because I have like 2, 3 different email accounts I'm trying to manage. Things slip by, and then I'm trying to schedule this and that. But yeah, so I've been really trying to take this time to be like, kind of like that Saturn energy. Where can I do the trimming? Where can I prune all this stuff, and come back to what's important for me, and how do I want to spend this time, instead of just like having it so all over the place? How am I like bringing it back to center to make sure I'm not spreading so thin? Because yeah, it feels like there's this responsibility to be like, oh man, now is like a really great time to just like double down on all this content production, and to just like spread myself thin, and then realizing that's not actually healthy.
Mhm. That's right. That's right. It's like, even though there's a temptation to do more, because we maybe are, everybody's going online, and there's this pressure to like do more and offer more things and go to more things because everyone's offering them. And, it's just important to, have that downtime. And I'm just so happy to hear that you're
Mm-hmm.
playing the guitar again. That's really great. Yeah.
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 How about you, Lucas?
Regarding what part of that?
Just like
What was the original question?
self-care, staying busy, I guess, like
Yeah.
busy managing yourself during this time, like getting too wrapped up in projects. How are you taking care of your mental health during this?
Yeah. I think, like I said, the sleep is definitely a non-negotiable, and then getting outside. I try to get outside at least once a day, even if the weather's kind of like, we're in this in between season now where it's like rainy and cold some days, and like sunny and warm others. And even on the cold rainy days, I try to get out for a little bit and get some fresh air. Um, and then I'm also like really getting into some garden projects right now, and have had well, I've seen it a lot of places on social media, like this idea of victory gardens coming back. And I've had a few friends like even reach
What's
out.
that?
Well, it was this idea, I guess, that came about in, I don't know, World War II, maybe, like Great Depression era. Maybe that was originally like after, in the Great Depression. I'm not sure. I associate it more with like the world wars, I guess. But just that like supply chains were stressed, and you know people were just having these small gardens to grow food for themselves and their family and community,
Mm,
sort of decentralizing the food system. Um, so yeah, just like with all this uncertainty regarding food supply and even medicine, like just in the last few weeks, there's been so many herbal medicine suppliers that have been backed up or out of stock on things.
wow.
There's been a big rush on people wanting to like boost their immune system and like take care of their nervous system and things like that. Um,
Hmm.
so I think that's another one of these things that's been amplified, is like just how sort of brittle and fragile our supply chains are in this country. We were seeing that in like the healthcare like industry with masks and ventilators and hospital beds being limited. But also we need to think about like food supplies and like just, I guess, like I've been thinking a lot about resiliency and like how to make my little patch of land more resilient and like a resource for other
Mm,
people. And I've had a
hmm.
lot of people reach out for just gardening tips, like friends asking, because I owned a farm for a few years, and um, learned a lot about permaculture. I went through a permaculture design course, and um, it's been fun, like trying to implement more of that in this new kind of landscape that I'm in. And I think that's also been like really grounding for me, and taking a lot of my focus isn't, instead of focusing on the news, it's like, how can I make my community a little more resilient? And
Yeah.
yeah, that's been a huge part of my like self-care, grounding, just staying sane, I guess.
Mm. Wow, what a
So
body of
awesome.
wisdom to have, to be able to implement that, like that you've had that experience like with the land and growing food. And it's like what a gift that is that you're bringing. And yeah, I can't wait to hear more about that. Maybe we'll do another Zoomcast on permaculture and resilience and sustainability or something.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the farms that I worked for and the farm that I co-owned as well was biodynamic. So there was this like spiritual science associated with it, and like working with elemental energies, and um, doing these homeopathic remedies for the land. And it's been awesome, like reconnecting with that, and um,
Mm.
connecting with like the spirits on the land and the spirits of different plants and herbal remedies, and um, bringing those worlds together, like just the practical, super practical, like how do I grow a lot of food and medicine here, but also how does that feed my spiritual life as well.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Yes, I remember reading about, the biodynamic work in my Rudolf Steiner class, and I was really interested in anthroposophical medicine. So really,
Mm-hmm.
like all of the elements and the different ways that our bodies are connected to the earth, and just the different energies and systems. And I just think that it was, really helpful. And so to be able to connect those two would be really great. It's like that we are part of the earth. We are cells of the earth's body. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So thinking about this like concept of like a global spiritual emergency that we're all going through, or what it feels like. I mean, it feels very, from a Grothian perspective, BPM 2 at times. Just like things are closing in, there's no escape. It feels like hell, and kind of sometimes very little action we can take. How are you guys like viewing how to navigate this? Any tips or like, I mean, I guess we have been talking about tips and advice, but I mean, I don't know. How are you navigating this? Or how can somebody navigate this from a spiritual emergence framework?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when we lean into the perinatal matrices, what we find is that it's a birth process. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying about having, other potential narratives. It's like, BPM 3 will get pretty messy. It'll get pretty hard. It'll get harder before it gets better, but then we'll birth out, and so in that way that I find that really helpful. And also, hanging on, like getting the structures, you mentioned Saturn too, like getting the structures in place that are going to carry us through when things do get a little bit harder. If they do, if the supply chains get strained, if, there's more intense quarantining, if there's more fear and more, obviously there'll be more, people passing and, things like that. So really just, like really getting those structures in place right now, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
how does that feel? Like not like an oppression from some outside force, but like, what are the structures that I'm building to contain or building to create a sanctuary, right? And that's sort
Mm-hmm.
of that difference, I guess, of whether it feels like a trap or a prison versus an opportunity to create structures that are really in alignment and feel
Mm-hmm.
supportive.
And
Yeah.
it sounds like that's what you're trying to do, Lucas. A
Yeah.
little bit, right? Creating structures at your own place and for the community.
Yeah, and relating it to like the second perinatal matrix, like the I guess the things that have been up for me the most were early on, like confusion and paranoia, and just being confused by all the news sources and different messaging and like conspiracy theories even, and just sort of paranoia around that. And like, is this worse than they're saying? Is it nothing and it's just like some sort of method of control or something like that? Like I've had all those thoughts in the last few weeks, and also like kind of frustration at sort of like these restrictions that are imposed on us, even though like in some way they're helpful and useful, and like, yeah, I think they're really important to like self quarantine and physically distance ourselves. But there's like also this frustrating tension in that as well. And so with all of that, like relating it to BPM2, I think my lesson in like holotropic spaces was like surrender and like giving up on things. Or I guess I don't want to say giving up, because there's like a difference between like surrender and giving up. Like giving up to me is kind of like a defeat. Like you're just, yeah, it's, I don't know. But surrender is like
Maybe
more of a,
giving in,
yeah, or like not
like
even that.
giving
It's like
into the
it,
process.
yeah, I don't know. I think like surrender can be like an empowering thing. Like you're surrendering to what is and realizing what you can't change, and what, like, we can't just change how the government is acting right now, or like what information is out there. We can't just, the more I dig for the truth, like I don't think anybody knows really what's going on right now. So I don't need to keep working to figure that out. But what can I do? I can, yeah,
Right.
I can work in the garden. I can go outside. I can take care of my little space, bring peace to like my home and my family and, my friends. And I think, isn't that a Jack Cornfield quote of like, tend to the part of the garden you can reach, or something like that? It's like, you
Mm,
don't have to do the whole, you don't have to fix everything. It's like, what is your part of the garden? What is your little piece in all of this? Like Michelle said, we're cells of the earth. And what is your role in all of this, and how are you going to contribute?
Mhm. Yeah. And for me, that also helps it not feel as overwhelming, right? To just kind of, breathe in and be like, okay, what can I do today, or in this session, or in this moment, just really chunk it down to some manageable, moment to moment, so that idea of presence and acceptance really, that there are things that we can do and we can show up for, and really have a lot of agency in, and there's other things that we can't. So maybe part of resiliency, or maybe part of sustainability, could be knowing the difference, right, between which are the things that we do have purview and which we not, and putting the energy in the directions that are fruitful or efficacious. Yeah,
mhm.
sorting that out.
Yeah,
Discernment, that's a good
Yeah.
word for it.
it's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
I think a lot about process during these times. Process and relationship. Like, what is our relationship to this process? Are we disengaging from it because it's too overwhelming and we kind of freeze and don't do anything? Or are we kind of leaning into it, maybe as like what Lucas is doing? It's like, okay, this process is happening, and how can I take at least action and engage in it a little bit? What is this process telling me about like how I view life? Maybe it makes me want to live a little bit more sustainable life. Well, how could I do that? Maybe plant a garden, right? And kind of take care of this little plot of land that I'm on, or like, or disengaging and not doing anything. Is that helpful? Sometimes, maybe. But yeah, just really kind of viewing your relationship to this process and just thinking about the overall process of what is going on here. We don't know, right? But how do we stay open to it, and work with it, instead of just trying to totally disengage from it and numb it out and push it away? I mean, it's happening, it's unfolding. So how can we engage with it a little bit differently?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge something that I recognize that being able to garden or like walk in the woods is like very privileged position
Privilege.
right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm so grateful to be where I am, and but I think that it's almost no matter where you are, you do have access to maybe grow some of your own food, even if it's just getting a sprouting jar and some seeds and having like some sprouts. You can watch those grow every day and put those on a salad, or something like that. That's just or even taking like avocado pits or like seeds from some of the food that you do eat, and sprouting those in like a paper towel, and just watching that seed sprout and grow, and maybe putting some intention around that. Or I know there's a lot of like seed swaps that aren't happening right now because of physical distancing and everything, but I think there's an opportunity to do a lot of that stuff online, and I'm sure there's some of that going on right now where you can swap seeds with people, just through the mail. And yeah, just even having a little flower pot with like some seeds going like out on your windowsill.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much that we can do to engage with the natural world, like almost no matter where we are.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was in Burlington, me and my roommate had a deck garden, and we didn't buy pots. I think we took drawers from old desks that we weren't using. We got creative and just like we're putting soil in all these funny structures that we had, just put it out on the deck. We were just didn't want to go out and buy all this stuff. We're like, all right, well, we got this drawer we're not using. We'll just go buy soil and fill it and put seeds in it. And it was actually really cool to have a deck garden. I don't know if you ever saw that, Lucas, if you were around during that time.
Yeah, I definitely remember some of that going on.
That's amazing. I love it. Well, I love the idea of, taking avocado pits or potatoes or, whatever that we have in our kitchen and, propagating it. There's no waste, right? And we can, keep it going. So that's great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this time. It's been so nourishing to, have these discussions and, all of the areas that we've touched in this conversation. So I just feel really grateful to have had this time with both of you, and, just seeing if there's any, last things that we want to say, or if we feel complete.
Yeah, I feel complete, and just want to wish everybody, everybody well. Stay safe, stay healthy. Things do feel uncertain at times, but how can we really like utilize this time as an opportunity? From that framework of spiritual emergence. Yeah, there is an emergency going on, but also how do we view this as an opportunity to then emerge into a new level, maybe a new level of awareness, a new level of being, and yeah, just to really stick with it. It's going to be tough, but I think we're all in it together, and we'll get through it. Might take a little bit, who knows, maybe not. And that would be awesome. But to really stick with this process that's unfolding, it's really gonna, I think, shift a lot of things in our world. And it's a lot of things that, Lucas, as you said in the beginning, like things that we wished for, right? I mean, systems that aren't working, like things that like hey, maybe I want a little bit more time. And with any new growth, there's a lot of discomfort. And this idea of letting go, and who would have thought letting go of some of these things actually would have been really difficult. But we don't know what's on the other end, but we can dream of a new world. And I think being able to plant these seeds, even metaphorically within our own lives, and dream a new world. What is beyond this? Let's keep the dream alive, and water those seeds, water those intentions in the next coming weeks, and to really work at creating something new in our lives and use this as an opportunity for growth. So that's what I want to close with.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just thinking about something that probably a lot of us in the spiritual emergence community could relate to, in this usage of the word normal, and people saying they want things back to normal. And I remember like going through crises in my life and like wishing I could go back to normal, or like comparing myself to normal people, you know, and but really thinking like what is normal? Like we don't have that baseline really, and even like that concept of going back to normal, like the way things were a month or two ago wasn't great either. Like there was so much going on in the world that wasn't working for most of us, and why would I want to go back to that? And so what are we moving forward into? um, you know, and I can't even say like that I want to feel normal. Like I don't know what that, like normal just doesn't seem like a useful word right now. So I'm gonna try to like root that out of my sentences and just like really think about, yeah, this new world that we're creating, because that's what it feels like. It's completely different. And so if so much is on the table, like what like Kyle was saying, and Michelle, you were saying it earlier, like what do we want this future to be? There's so much opportunity. It's like any sort of chaos, right? There's so much confusion and energy like swirling around, but it also means there's so much opportunity to come out of it. We don't know. So that's equally anxiety producing and exciting, I think.
Mm.
Totally.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and for me, just remembering that, you know, with this amplification, with everything that's coming to the surface, everything that's being unveiled, that it is a detox, that it is challenging and sometimes overwhelming, and to kind of up all of the, you know, the self-care things, and also remember that this can also bring out the greatest humanity. And we're starting to see that in certain ways, that, you know, that it doesn't always have to just bring out the shadow. It will do that, but it will also bring out the light, and it will bring out the best in humanity. And that that if we hold on to the hope that that's also possible, that that there's fruits. You know, if the seeds are planted, there will be fruits, and just holding on to the hope for that. And you know, just, you know, letting you know too that we're a community, and we're here to support you. And you know, please feel free to reach out to us through Setting Sun Wellness or through our individual sites if you feel you need support in this time. And we'll be offering some more community support groups in the coming, you know, months and weeks as well. So you know, just wanted to let you know that we're available, and you know, just stick together, and we'll get through this. And it may be a different world. It inevitably will be a different world, but you know, we're here, and we're pulling together. So thank you for this time together.
Thank
And
you.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you both.
Okay.